A School of Her Own by Arleta Richardson. Chapter 16. The Choice is Made. April was a month of many moods. Bright sunlight, sudden showers, and mud. In spite of Mr. Elliott's best efforts, our room looked like a back pasture. I finally concluded that it would be better to overlook the muddy boots and shoes that tracked in and out all day. When it dried, the dirt was swept outside and the cycle began again. I did, however, insist that hands be washed before the children came to class. "My pa says you'll eat a pound of dirt before you die," Jamie informed us. "You don't have to have it all at once," I said. "Try to spread it out over your lifetime. Besides, we need to keep our books looking neat. They have to last a long time." While the children were busy with their lessons, I gazed out the window at the early spring day. The annual program for the school board and parents was to be given the third Friday of this month, just 2 weeks away. I wasn't worried about the children doing well. I knew they were prepared and anxious to please. I felt that I had been conscientious and successful in my first year. Carrie Lawton approached me at the beginning of the week. "My pa says he ain't coming to the program," she said. "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied. "You, Julian, and Nancy have done fine work this year. Will your mother be able to come?" "Pa won't let her. He says we wouldn't be here either if the law didn't make us." I was sure that was true. It would be a miracle if any of the girls in that family ever went to high school. "But Elizabeth is coming. She says Leonard Williams is going to bring her." Carrie searched my face for my reaction. I forced myself to smile. "I'm sure we'll have a nice group of people here to enjoy the program. I'm counting on you to win the spelling bee for the school." Elizabeth again. I didn't know why I had assumed that Len would be coming with me that evening. It hadn't been mentioned between us. It occurred to me that perhaps Len did not even know he was bringing Elizabeth, but dismissed the thought. She wouldn't say so if he hadn't asked her. At home, Alice was in a flurry of activity. Her wedding was to be in May, and Augusta was coming in daily to help with the sewing. "We'll be doing this for you next," Augusta said to me, "though I can't see why you girls want to rush into things. You'll have your whole life to be tied down to a house." "If I weren't tied down to a house, I'd be tied down to a school, Augusta," Alice laughed. "And I wouldn't call 2 years rushing into things." "I suppose not," Augusta conceded. "You're pretty level-headed." She looked over her glasses at me. "Have you made up your mind about your young man?" "I'm happy being tied down to a school, Augusta. Why should I look for something else?" "That's a fine speech," she replied. "I don't believe a word of it." Neither did Sarah Jane. "You should let Len know how you feel about him, Mabel. He's not going to speak out if he thinks you don't care." "Sarah Jane," I said with a sigh. "How long have we been friends?" About 19 years. "Would you like it to continue for another 19? Because if you would, don't make silly suggestions like that. You know I'm not going to throw myself at Len." Sarah Jane whooped with laughter. "I'm glad you said that instead of me." "Don't you dare say what you're thinking," I warned her. "That is in the forgotten past." "Past, maybe, but certainly not forgotten," she gasped. "Come on, Mabel. You have to see the funny side of it. Very few people are privileged to meet the love of their life under such auspicious conditions." "Very few people have someone to take care of all the details of their future either," I replied. "How could I be so lucky?" The evening of the program arrived before I was ready for it. Nothing had been said about Len taking Elizabeth. While he was busy getting dressed, I hurried over to the school. It wouldn't hurt to be there early and be sure that all was ready. Families soon began to arrive, and I was kept occupied greeting them and trying to calm the excited children. I wasn't aware that Len had arrived until he appeared at my side. "You left before I knew it, Mabel," he said. "I intended to walk over with you. I thought you might need some help getting ready." I looked up to see Elizabeth hovering in the background. "Thank you," I said airily. "I got along just fine. Everything is under control." Len looked disappointed, but he went to sit down. Elizabeth sat down beside him. I'll just keep my eyes on the children and not pay any attention to them, I thought. It's none of my affair that he chose to come with her. The room was soon filled, and Mr. Williams, as school board president, opened the program with prayer. It was time to begin the evening's entertainment. As I rose to lead the beginners to the front for their part, the door opened and Russ Bradley stepped into the room. My heart flopped and I could feel my face getting warm. What was he doing here? He had said he would call at home on Sunday. The children did well, though I probably wouldn't have noticed if someone had made a mistake. My mind was in such a whirl that the congratulations of the parents hardly registered. It seemed like hours before the schoolroom cleared out and I was left alone with Russ. He took both of my hands in his. I know you weren't expecting me tonight, Mabel, but I couldn't wait until Sunday to see you. Warren loaned me a buggy, so I thought I could take you home in the morning. May I? He looked so hopeful that I hadn't the heart to tell him no. Some time ago, Len had offered to drive me home, and I had been looking forward to it. Of course, he might have just been doing the polite thing. For all I knew, he might have asked Elizabeth to accompany us. Of course you may, I said to Russ. It was nice of you to come. We have a lot to talk about, Russ went on. I hope you're ready to consider announcing our engagement. Why not? I thought wearily. He was so positive. It seemed more effort than it was worth to find reasons why I should wait longer. I opened my mouth to say yes when he stopped me. Don't answer now, Mabel. I want to talk to your father first. We'll leave early in the morning, shall we? He looked around the empty room. You certainly won't be missing this. I'd think 1 year of teaching would be enough. I'd rather you stayed home until we were married. Are you ready to go now? I nodded, and we went out into the night. We would talk later. Things were not going as I wanted them to, but I felt powerless to do anything about it. And I was too tired to think any further ahead than the moment. Russ left me at the door and went into town to spend the night. A lamp was burning on the table, and I picked it up to light the way to my room. Mabel, Len's voice stopped me at the stairway. I've been waiting for you to come home. Could we talk before you go to bed, if you're not too tired, that is? Suddenly, I was not at all tired. I came back to the table, and we sat down facing each other. Len was ill at ease, but he cleared his throat and spoke. I wasn't prepared to say anything like this, he began. But when I saw the way that fellow Russ looked at you tonight, I knew I had to. Mabel, I haven't anything to offer you but just myself. You know I'm called of the Lord to do His work, and the payment in this life is exceedingly small. There would be no big house or money to spend on luxuries. I'm selfish even to ask you to share a future as bleak as that. But since the first time I saw you, I knew you were the only one for me. I've wanted to tell you so many times this year, but I didn't dare, knowing that you were spoken for. He brushed his hair back nervously. I shouldn't be saying this now, but somehow I felt that this was the time. Mabel, would you consider marrying me in a year or so? Oh, Len, I replied. There's no one I'd rather have. I didn't know how I'd live without you once you married Elizabeth. Elizabeth? Len exclaimed. Whatever gave you the idea that I would marry her? She did, I guess. You hadn't said you weren't courting her. I didn't realize I needed to. I never dreamed you'd think I was interested in anyone except you. It doesn't matter now, I said. We both know that the Lord has brought us together. He was the one who made sure you spoke tonight, Len. I was ready to tell Russ tomorrow that I would accept his offer. We talked for a long while before I made my way upstairs. I couldn't remember ever having been happier. Len promised to come on Sunday to bring me back after agreeing that I must go home with Russ as planned. I don't understand, Russ said when I told him as gently as possible that I couldn't marry him. If you've been planning on someone else all along, why didn't you tell me? But I haven't been, Russ. I've prayed and considered your offer very carefully. I know you would have done all you could to make me happy, but I've never been as sure as anything as I am now about this. He nodded dismally. I understand. I'm not happy, but I understand. I wish you all the best in your life.
Thank you, Russ. You have 3 more years before you're free to marry, and I know the Lord has the right person for you, too.
He looked unconvinced, but when we parted at my porch, he shook my hand warmly. I'll not forget these years, Mabel. You've been a wonderful friend.
I won't forget them either, I told him. It's part of both our lives that nothing will ever change.
My 19th birthday dinner was over, and Sarah Jane and I were sitting under our favorite tree. A year ago today, you declared you wouldn't consider marriage for years and years, if ever, she mused. And now, suddenly here you are, the first one to marry. You planned it all along, didn't you?
You know better than that,
I laughed.
Besides, we'll not be getting married for 2 years at least. You and Thomas will have your wedding as soon as he's out of school. Isn't everything turning out the way you wanted it to?
Well, I was looking forward to visiting you in that big house in town. But I suppose if you must consider whom you live with rather than where you live. I looked at her fondly.
Sarah Jane, you are impossible. What would I ever do without you?
My thoughts exactly, she nodded. Now, let me tell you what to do next. She grinned and covered her head with her arms as I pounced on her. End of chapter 16. End of A School of Her Own.